What if I told you that a single passage, only 16 verses long, has been whispered on battlefields, clutched in trembling hands, and credited with saving thousands of lives? What if a prayer written over 3,000 years ago could shield you from bullets, bombs, and the shadow of death itself? This is not folklore. It is not a fairy tale. It is the story of Psalm 91, the soldier's psalm, the shield of God's people, from the muddy trenches of World War I to the fiery skies of World War II, from jungle patrols in Vietnam to modern wars in the Middle East. Soldiers, mothers, and ordinary believers have turned to these words. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And they claim, sometimes in awe, sometimes in tears, that these words have worked as a literal shield in their darkest hours. Tonight, on The Bible Weaver, we will weave together those stories. Stories of men who walked through fire and did not burn. Families who prayed Psalm 91 over their homes as bombs fell, and somehow the explosions stopped at their doorstep. Survivors who should have died but didn't, and they point to this psalm as the reason why. Is Psalm 91 merely poetry, or is it a supernatural key hidden in plain sight? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will never read this psalm the same way again. To understand Psalm 91's power, we must step back into history. The Psalms were Israel's ancient prayer book, songs, laments, declarations of trust, written across centuries by kings, prophets, and shepherds. Psalm 91 stands out. Unlike others, it is not a cry of despair, nor a hymn of praise. It is a manifesto of protection, a declaration that those who dwell close to God live under His unbreakable shield. Through the ages, rabbis called it the Psalm of Plagues. Early Christians prayed it during epidemics. Monks recited it as they walked into leper colonies. In medieval Europe, it was written on scrolls and carried as protection against pestilence. But in the modern age, its reputation changed. Soldiers began to call it their psalm. In World War I, chaplains distributed cards with Psalm 91 printed on them. Men slipped them into helmets and shirt pockets. Stories spread of bullets striking those cards, stopped as if by an invisible wall. In World War II, this pattern repeated. American, British, and Australian troops prayed Psalm 91 before parachuting behind enemy lines. Parents at home formed Psalm 91 prayer groups, praying daily for sons and daughters at the front. Even today, U.S. military chaplains hand out Psalm 91 booklets. Police officers, firefighters, and first responders memorize it as their prayer of safety. Why? Because it speaks directly to the human cry in the face of danger. Am I safe? Is there a shield stronger than death? The psalm answers, yes. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. One story comes from the First World War. A battalion in France carried Psalm 91 cards given by their chaplain. They recited it each morning. After months of bloody fighting, surrounding units were decimated, but this battalion reported not a single combat death. The men credited Psalm 91. Skeptics dismissed it as chance, but to those soldiers, it was divine proof. In W.Y. Soane, a young American soldier was shot at close range. The bullet pierced his uniform, but lodged in a small Bible in his chest pocket. When he opened it, the bullet had stopped exactly at Psalm 91. He carried that Bible until his dying day, testifying that God Himself had caught the bullet. Across America, prayer circles formed around Psalm 91. One mother in Kansas prayed it daily for her son, a pilot in the Pacific. His bomber was hit and exploded in midair. While the rest of the crew perished, he parachuted safely into the ocean and was rescued. In every letter he wrote home, he told her, "Mom, your psalm saved me again." In Iraq and Afghanistan, chaplains recount soldiers who memorize Psalm 91 before deployment. Some units nickname it the sniper's shield. Stories circulate of IEDs exploding but leaving vehicles untouched, of ambushes failing when soldiers walked away without a scratch. But Psalm 91 is not only for soldiers. One woman battling cancer read Psalm 91 aloud every night. Doctors said she had 6 months. Years later, she was alive, healed, telling everyone that dwelling under the shadow of the Almighty gave her peace beyond medicine. Another man faced financial ruin. He declared Psalm 91 daily, believing God would rescue him from the snare of the fowler. Opportunities opened, debts cleared. He rebuilt his life, giving credit to God's promises. These stories, across centuries and continents, echo the same theme. When fear rises like a flood, Psalm 91 is the anchor. Imagine a battlefield at dawn. Smoke drifts like a ghost across shattered earth. The ground trembles with the roar of artillery. In the middle of that chaos, a soldier presses a small Bible against his chest, whispering words written millennia before. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day. Explosions thunder on every side. Men fall, crying out for help. Fear crawls into every heart. Yet somehow, this soldier feels an invisible wall rise around him. He is not fearless. No human ever is in such moments. But he is unshaken, because the words of Psalm 91 are not simply ink on paper to him. They are a fortress, a covenant, a lifeline stronger than steel. Generations of warriors have clung to these verses. Some called Psalm 91 the soldier's shield. Others named it the frontline psalm. The imagery is vivid: arrows, pestilence, destruction at noonday, 10,000 falling all around. It is as if the writer knew what it meant to be surrounded by war, to hear the hiss of weapons in the dark and the wee cries of the wounded in daylight. Yet right in the middle of such terror, Psalm 91 declares something radical. It will not come near you. Not because you are lucky, not because you are stronger or braver, but because you are sheltered, covered, hidden in the shadow of the Almighty. Think of the soldier clutching that promise as bullets cut the air around him. Think of him crouched in a foxhole, mud covering his boots, whispering, "He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall find refuge." Suddenly, the battlefield is no longer just a place of death. It becomes a place where eternity breaks through, where the unseen hand of God shields fragile flesh from steel and fire. Now shift the scene. Midnight, a mother kneels beside her children in a darkened house. Outside, the sirens scream. Bombs whistle through the air. The ground shakes with every detonation. Her heart races. She cannot control the war. She cannot stop the bombs. But she can speak words older than the storm. Because you have made the Lord, who is my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place. No evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling. As the house trembles, she clings to that promise. Not a promise that war will disappear, but that her family is hidden in the shelter of God. She feels her fear rise, then subside, replaced with something unexplainable: peace. In the morning, when the smoke clears, she walks outside and sees devastation all around, yet her home stands. Was it chance? Was it skillful construction? She believes it was the shield of Psalm 91, stretched invisibly over her roof as she prayed. This is the mystery of Psalm 91. It speaks into our most vulnerable moments, the times when human strength has no answer, when disease spreads, when war erupts, when everything we thought unshakable collapses. This psalm offers an image so tender and yet so powerful. He will cover you with his feathers. It is the image of a bird shielding her young, wings outstretched against the storm. The storm is still real, the thunder still shakes the earth, but the young are safe because of who shelters them. That is the essence of divine protection, not the absence of danger, but the presence of a stronger covering. Testimonies echo this truth. A paratrooper in World War II recited Psalm 91 before every jump. He later said, "I went into combat 13 times. Bullets whizzed past me, friends fell at my side, but I walked away each time. I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't the fastest, but I believed those words, that his angels would bear me up." A modern soldier in Afghanistan carried a dog-eared card with Psalm 91 printed on it. After surviving an ambush, he told his chaplain, "It wasn't my rifle that saved me, it was that psalm. I read it every night. It became more real than the desert around me." And it isn't just soldiers. Nurses in plague wards have whispered it while tending the sick. Pilots have recited it over roaring engines before missions. Parents have prayed it over children with fevers in the middle of the night. Each story, though unique, rings with the same conviction. I was not alone. I was covered. Here lies the emotional climax. Psalm 91 forces us to confront the clash between what we see and what we believe. We see danger. We see war. We see disease. Fear tells us we are exposed, fragile, doomed. But Psalm 91 declares another reality, that above what is visible, there is an invisible fortress. That while thousands may fall, the one who abides under God's shadow remains untouchable until their purpose is complete. This is why soldiers wept as they recited it, why mothers clung to it as bombs fell, why even today, in hospitals, prisons, and war zones, these 16 verses are spoken as though they are oxygen itself. Because in the clash between despair and hope, Psalm 91 tips the balance. But make no mistake, Psalm 91 is not superstition. It is not a charm you wear like a lucky coin. It is a covenant. Its power does not come from reciting the words mechanically, but from the relationship they describe. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High. This is not about a one-time prayer in desperation. It is about dwelling, abiding, living in communion with God. Those who do so discover that protection is not a distant concept. It is a daily reality. That is why, when chaos rages, those who know God can stand in the fire and say, "I will not be moved." Not because danger vanishes, but because God Himself becomes their fortress. And here lies the heart of the climax. When you realize that Psalm 91 is not a relic of ancient poetry, but a living shield. When you see that its promises are not confined to parchment, but leap into the present moment, you may feel small, weak, exposed. But when you step under this covering, the battlefield changes. The bombs still fall, the disease still spreads, but you, yes, you, are hidden, guarded, shielded by the one whose wings never fold. The world will call it coincidence. Skeptics will shrug it off. But those who have lived it know better. They have walked through fire and not been burned. They have faced death and still breathe. And they whisper, with tears in their eyes, it was Psalm 91. So picture it once more. The soldier rising from the trenches, Bible in hand. The mother rocking her children as the night shakes with war. The patient in the hospital bed, whispering words of life over frail lungs. The worker facing unemployment, reciting promises of provision. Different faces, different battles, but the same refuge. Psalm 91 is not bound by time or place. It belongs to anyone who dares to believe. Anyone who runs under the shadow of the Almighty. Anyone who says, in trembling faith, "You are my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him I will trust." And in that moment, whether on the battlefield, in the sick room, or in the silence of your own heart, you discover the climax of the psalm, that you are never alone, that an invisible fortress surrounds you, That fear has no final word, because the Almighty has spoken. So what does this mean for you right now? You may not be on a battlefield, but maybe you fight a different war. Anxiety that steals your peace, financial struggles that crush your spirit, sickness that whispers hopelessness. Psalm 91 invites you into God's shelter. It says, "When fear stalks you at night, you are safe. When chaos rages at work, you are guarded. When disease spreads, you are covered." Praying Psalm 91 is not a magic formula. It is stepping into a relationship of trust. It is saying, "Lord, I cannot protect myself, but you can." And when you dwell in that place, when you abide under the shadow of the Almighty, fear loses its grip. Friend, if this message touched you, don't keep it hidden. Share in the comments. Have you ever prayed Psalm 91 and seen God's hand protect you? Your story might be the lifeline someone else needs today. If you believe the world needs more hope, hit that like button. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who are searching for protection in fearful times. And most of all, subscribe to the Bible Weaver. This channel exists to uncover the hidden treasures of Scripture, weaving together the ancient word with the stories of today. When you subscribe, you join a community of believers who believe that the Bible is not just history. It is alive, powerful, and life-changing. Don't just watch, be part of this movement. Share this video with a friend in need of encouragement. Start a Psalm 91 prayer group. Make this psalm your daily shield. And remember, He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. This is the Bible Weaver. Stay under His shadow, walk in His light, and I'll see you in the next story.